All right, everyone. Now we have to praise a Democrat, actually, a fairly left-wing Democrat. Wes Moore, of course, the governor of Maryland. Maryland? I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. I mean, if I ask 4 different people, I'm going to get 4 different answers. I just look at it and say, Mary, okay. That's how we pronounce Mary. Land. It's Maryland. Or Maryland. Or, again, I don't know. Purging marijuana convictions, actually. Over 100,000 of them. Link in the description, archived, of course. These are nonviolent drug convictions throughout the state's history over the course of a number of decades. I congratulate this move. This is the right thing to do. I wish that red state governors, by the way, would do the same thing, because it would be, number one, it's ethical. Number 2, it's consistent with science. And number 3, politically speaking, it's actually a good move for you to do. Marijuana does not need to be illegal in the United States. I do see it as a states' rights issue. I think that the federal government backing off on high-level scheduling is a good thing, although it's simply one little step in the right direction, and mainly the state should take care of it. But that being said, each individual state should be pressured to legalize marijuana. And by legalize, I don't mean legalize in the sense of, hey, we're going to allow a state-licensed dispensary and we're going to tax the fuck out of it to make revenue off of stoners. I mean more like the Vermont state way, which is like, hey, there will be dispensaries, but we're pretty much looking the other way. If a person has a couple of weed plants, we don't really care. As long as they're not giving it to kids, and there's no DUI or something like that. They're not, walking down Main Street and smoking and toking and stuff like that. If they're on their own property or something, in the state of Vermont, you're allowed to grow a few weed plants. It's not a crime, for example. And this Vermont police, by the way, for many decades have looked the other way anyway, for the most part. There were tales, I remember talking to several people in Burlington. They were talking about some of their weed run-ins, because I was a stoner back in college. And they were like, the cops here, they're not actually going to book you. And they know you're probably a UVM student, and if you get caught with drugs of any kind, that you can lose your Pell Grant or something like that. And so what they would do is they would simply take your pipe and take your weed and pretty much put it in the sewer. And that happens, actually. For example, here in the Netherlands, weed is fully legal. And people can, by the way, publicly imbibe it the same they can alcohol. And the drinking age is 18. And psilocybin is legal, and other soft drugs are semi-legal. They're kind of sort of decriminalized. For some reason, the Netherlands doesn't seem to be falling apart. It seems to be doing pretty well, other than having a huge housing crisis and a crazy government sometimes that's trying to steal farms. Everything else is situation nominal. Everything's fine. Well, weed certainly didn't cause the Dutch to suddenly become an impoverished and decrepit people. And also, I noticed something, and this is very strange. The Netherlands gets a reputation for being like, it's weed city. Like, you look up weed miser, there's a reason why the Dutch is specifically mentioned in that parody song. But I smell it less than if I was on UVM's campus, actually. After my overdose on spice, I couldn't even smell weed without having a panic attack, because it's a cannabinoid, and I'm like, oh shit, am I going to get a contact high and relapse into a cannabis psychosis or something like that? Of course, that never happened. Yeah, I mean, I smelled more of it there than I smell here, where weed has been legal forever and nobody gives a shit. Sometimes you smell it. There's some hippies that live a couple streets from here, and they wake and bake. You can tell. You go by their house at around 8:30 in a short period of time. You will smell marijuana. They do it every single day. And they look like the kind of artsy couple that would smoke weed, by the way. It's very stereotypical. Wes Moore is fundamentally right. If a person has been convicted on a law that's no longer on the books, number one, in general, it should be purged to begin with. And number two, I mean, marijuana is not a drastically intoxicating substance. It's possible for a person to imbibe marijuana in reasonable amounts and still be perfectly functioning. Unlike with alcohol, where you've got calories involved, Marijuana is basically the same and should be treated the same. I do believe in a licensing system for state dispensaries. That way people can get their marijuana, and for a surcharge they know that there's no fentanyl in it, so to speak. But they should also be able to grow it themselves, tax-free, by the way. They should be able to sell it amongst themselves, tax-free, etc., etc., etc. A lot of people go to the dispensary anyway. By the way, the prices are similar in some cases. Wesmore is fundamentally right. Even if it's a left-wing Democrat, if they're doing something that is commendable, if they're doing something that is laudable, then they should be praised for doing so. I wish that the GOP would fucking get on board with the concept and just fucking legalize it. Or at least decriminalize it. Again, you don't need an expansive regulatory system to deal with a fucking plant. It's called weed. It's literally a weed. It's not difficult to grow. It's not difficult to figure out how to do the marijuana shuffle. And it's, again, it's not chemically addictive, although it is habituating. That's true, and so people need to keep an eye on that. Children should not be using it. But then again, they shouldn't be using anything. The pharma industry hands them pills like Skittles, and we look the other way and have no problem with it. Ritalin and Addies and Xannies and all of these other fun things. We drug our kids up all the time, but they're worried about, the little green bag in the house, and that's a reason to take someone's guns away. Oh, you can take Xanax and Adderall, and that's perfectly fine, but the government has a problem with it if you toke a joint every now and then. I think it's ridiculous. The drug war has been an abysmal failure. We've had scientific studies dating back more than a half of a century into the potential health benefits of marijuana and many other substances, ibogaine, ayahuasca slash DMT, LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, all of these things under the sun. They can be used as medicine. The fact that they change the brain state is irrelevant. We give people pills for that all the time that probably do a lot more harm. I was a Ritalin kid myself, for example. Giving people painkillers. Congressional testimony by the manufacturers of this painkiller. They swear up and down nobody's going to get addicted to it, and now there's 500,000 people that are using it constantly and buying it on the black market. You don't get that with marijuana. The only reason there is a black market is because you've made it illegal. Otherwise, people will grow their plant, they'll trim their little buds, and Harold the Happy Hippie will sit there in his cornfield toking all day. Who cares? They should purge the convictions. They should do this nationwide. That's about all. Peace out.